Hey Gary, welcome to another episode of Social Drinking. Uh, it's an afternoon episode where I, unlike last time, do get to enjoy some fancy beverages. This time it's just kind of a basic wine, nothing fancy except for my 1980 something Spud McKinsey commemorative glass. I checked this thing out on like Amazon and it's worth like $5. So fancy. Oh, it makes everything taste better too. It almost looks like I'm drinking Bud Light. I promise you I'm not. You can see it's more yellow than Bud Light typically is. So that's my being a bastard for this portion. To pick up on a little bit of what we were talking about last time, we had brought up, well, you had brought up video games because I asked about military portrayals in media, and so that brought out the idea of video games being one of those media portrayals because you were right. I introduced you to Battlefield, specifically Battlefield Bad Company 2. I wanted to talk a little bit about video games because I still play video games, and who doesn't like them? And I have a cat desperately trying to sit on my laptop right now like a bastard. Um, but yeah, Battlefield Bad Company 2, one of the greatest written, scripted story like character driven shooters I've played ever as a shooter game with good multiplayer. I've been playing some other games too. It was a really interesting game in a lot of ways, given its gameplay, its sound design. Um, it was just a fun game I played for just way too much time. But now I wanted to talk to you about another game that I think you should get into because it's awesome, and I've been getting into it, and it's called the Kerbal Space Program, or KSP for short. It's a PC game you can get on the Steam platform. It's about like 20 or 30 bucks, I think. And basically, think of it like this: Minecraft, wherein you can do whatever the hell you want, uh, except that you're building a space program. And that's the point of the game. So, if you want to build the International Space Station, but with your style, go ahead. If you want to build a single orbit to re-entry like ship slash plane design, cool. If you want to, go to the moon and back, go to another planet and back. Like it's ridiculous. It's a physics simulator that gives you rockets and jets, and it's fun, and it's actually really in depth in terms of you have to like pay attention to things like thrust to weight ratios and center of gravity and aerodynamics, and it's very very detailed. Like, I'm gonna post some links in this video where I show some of my more favorite YouTube videos of people playing this game, and you will blow up a lot of shit when you're doing this game. I hate this cat. It's affectionate, but she's stupid. And it's such a remarkable game. And I think it's interesting because a lot of really remarkable games are going this route now, where it's giving freedom and it takes some level of intelligence to play. It's not like, a lot of games where it's like, point and click adventure. Like, you're just clicking on things that stand out. Or puzzler games, which are, oh, it's a puzzle, but it's just a simple puzzle. Um, but yeah, I like that games are heading in this direction where it's becoming, complex simulators that teach you something. This is a game, the kind of game I would want my daughter, when she's old enough to actually play games, to kind of get into, because it's fun. You can do ludicrous, stupid, ridiculous things. It's creative as all get out. There's tons and tons of mods and ability to do different stuff with it. Somebody made a mod where you can make all of the Star Wars vehicles, and they don't really fly with air resistance because who knew George Lucas wasn't really making things physically possible, uh, given standard aerodynamics as far as, with the propulsion systems I guess we have. But But yeah, it's ridiculous, but it's also really, it forces you to understand things. Like, I'm learning about how to just simply put something into orbit and the efficient way to do that. And that's rocket science. It's a video game that teaches you rocket science. That's so cool to me that we can start outsourcing like our intelligence through video games of things like rocket science. I mean, there's games out there these days that are so interesting because it is like, it's not just let's play video games because I'm bored and I want to stop thinking. It's like there's games that make differences to things in the real world. There is a game that you play online that I don't remember the name of it. I'd have to look it up. But basically, the premise of the game is gas costs $20 a gallon. How do you live your life given that? And once they measured like people playing this game, they found that people who played game assuming gas at $20 a gallon, after they played the game for like whatever amount of time, they started using less gasoline because it just kind of became ingrained in their head that this is an expensive commodity that I should treat carefully, and why waste money on it. There's a couple of games that they used to actually like progress science further. There was one that was used to find out the shape of a protein that exists in the human body that scientists have been trying to figure it out for like 10 years, and it took 10 hours of people playing video games to finally do it. There's another one called iWire, I know, that I signed up for and played a little bit, where it's people mapping out the neural pathways of the optic nerve, and because we're better as human beings at that than machines recognizing patterns specifically. And you can use machines to kind of help a little bit, but we're doing science with video games now. There's even a shooter game that I haven't played yet, but I'm really curious to. A first-person shooter where you are in a war zone and you're a photographer documenting the war. You never shoot a gun, you don't kill people. You're a war journalist in a war zone. I don't remember what it's called, but that's probably a very... I'm curious to play that. I need to find a way to do that, because that, to me, is like a whole spinning video games on their head as far as violent video games, and you could use that to develop all kinds of stuff. Like empathy, sympathy, critical thinking, understanding of world events. It's, social responsibility. I don't know. It's cool. It's cool to me where video games are going. And I like that I can turn on my laptop in the morning before I go to work and dick around with rocket science. And I've killed a lot of Kerbals in Kerbal Space Program. Mostly through just stupid, wonder what happens when I do this thing. And they have died. And I drink to them. So yeah, what do you think is interesting about video games in the modern era? They're everywhere now. They're on cell phones. They're probably going to be in cars soon as cars develop more and more integration with software. They're becoming so mainstream that the question is, what are we going to do with all this time? And I think it's interesting to see a lot of people are saying, well, why don't we do something productive with it? It's counter to a lot of the stereotypes about video games, that it's just kind of something to waste your time with. So what are you playing these days, and what do you think is interesting about video games? I mean, E3 just happened. I don't know if you paid any attention to it, but, let me know what you think and what you're doing. And then we will keep doing this. I should tell you that the whole get drunker and drunker each time is probably definitely happening at this point, as you should notice by my ridiculousness in this video. Holla at me, boy.